To order? Well, I guess we're a minute early, huh?
Oh, we are. We're a minute early.
Well, might as well go ahead and get started.
I tell you. It's 3 o'clock somewhere, sir.
There you go. I, first of all, want to welcome our new members, Commissioner Williams-Cox, Commissioner Matlow, Commissioner Rick Minor. Welcome. We are so glad to have you all. This is an exciting time for Blueprint. We've got so many good things going on, and as our mayor said yesterday, this is a bright day in Tallahassee, and I affirm that wholeheartedly. And so we're going to go through our agenda this afternoon. I think we've got a great agenda to give you all, those that are new, an update on where we are and where we're headed. So with that, we'll start with item number 2, the informational items and presentations. The chairman's report is Mr. Tomlinson.
Yeah, Mr. Tomlinson is here. Mr. Tomlinson,
there he is. Okay, I didn't see him in the back.
Come forward. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Tomlinson, if you would come and give us you all's report, we'd appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Great to see you. We had our meeting on November the 29th. We honored 2 outgoing CAC members. That was Kent Wimmer, who was with us for 6 years. He was in the environmental space on our Citizens Advisory Committee, and Gordon Hanson served 3 years in our senior citizen role on our committee. We approved our consent items unanimously, which included some minutes that were modified, and the appointments of Dr. Sean McGlynn, Linda, he's in the environmental sector, Linda Vaughn representing our senior citizen sector, and Daniel Petronio from our financial space. We elected a new vice chair for 2019, Mrs. Elva Peppers, and we got updates on the Northeast Gateway and some infrastructure project updates. And we got our very first OEV update from our new director, Christine Paredes, and we congratulated her on her appointment, elevation. Yes. And then just the standard business took place. And this is my last report to you guys in this capacity as January 1st, Vice Chair J.R. Harding takes over as Chairman of the Citizens Advisory Committee. So it's been my pleasure, and I wish y'all a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you so much. And you sure you're going to let J.R. take over things?
He's got it.
He's a good man. He'll do a good job for us, I know. Christina, I forgot that you were appointed since our last meeting. Congratulations again, and we're certainly looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we're on to item number 3, consent. Is there a motion to accept the items on consent?
So moved. Consent.
As a motion and a second, is there any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously with Commissioners Proctor, Daly, and Jackson. Commissioner Daly right on time.
Mayor.
You want me to count you as a yay on the consent items?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Dozier.
Oh, and Commissioner Dozier. I'm sorry, I didn't see her. Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. Okay, the motion passes unanimously with those commissioners absent that I mentioned. Okay, item number 4, general business and presentations. Item number 5.
I will turn.
Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioners. We've got 4 items under general business, and this really provides us a unique opportunity at the end of what's been a tremendously busy year in the intergovernmental agency world to focus on a handful of items. Well, we're gonna start off the first 2 general business items, do a little bit of a deeper dive into what is your Blueprint IA, right? It's the major infrastructure programs, and it's also now the Office of Economic Vitality. You're going to hear in this agenda item and the next agenda item from our directors, but there's been a tremendous amount of progress that's already been made since the voters approved the Blueprint 2020 extension, and really wasting no time in any of these initiatives, really hitting the ground running so that we can prioritize, we can prepare, we can come up with funding strategies and plans, we can build a 5-year capital improvement program, and we can start immediately getting ready for a number of those large infrastructure projects. That's a sort of a segue to the next item. In terms of OEV, as you know, we could have waited, you could have waited to begin a consolidated economic vitality office until 2020. And clearly, this body decided not to do that. What you're soon will hear from Christina is tremendous progress that's really been made in the first 2 years of OEV's existence, right? And we're going to spend a little bit of time, maybe a little bit more, not too much more, but a little bit more than we have done, not just to cover where we are now, what's occurred in the last quarter, and maybe what is occurring in the quarter ahead, but really to pay attention to what's happened in the last 3 years. What are those systematic changes that have occurred, and what do we have in the years ahead that is so exciting, and in terms of economic vitality, really has never occurred previously, and sort of a head nod to the IA for the forethought and foresight to really ramp it up quickly. Now, I'm going to be the third and last, I think, to congratulate in this meeting somebody who has been well known to local government in this community for well over a decade, well known to economic development and economic vitality, and has really hit the ground running in her new role as director. As I think I have briefed in each commissioner briefing, I also want to take this opportunity, as I did at the Citizens Advisory Committee, on behalf of WCOT and Vince Long, the Management Committee, thanking Al Latimer for his commitment, fulfilling his commitment. Al is a great builder, and he's a humble individual. He committed to us 2.5 years ago to give 2 solid years to building the structure and building the team, and he did far more than that. He's a humble individual, and he really did not want, at the last meeting, any sort of praise. He's just a gentleman, and I am happy to report to this body and room, he remains a great citizen of Tallahassee and Leon County, playing a lot of golf, testing the private sector, and doing good things. With that acknowledgement for Mr. Latimer, it really is an honor for me to turn it over, if you will, Mr. Chairman, to our new director, Christina Paredes.
Thank you, and I'm very excited to be here. We have a lot of challenges in our community, but that all gives way to opportunity and to great opportunity, and I'm very excited to have my team behind me. We have a solid team, and we're working on building capacity, too, within both divisions, so we're really excited to be here with you today and to share with you the work that we've done over the last quarter. As we're working to build Florida's capital for business, this is the vision that our team is working towards under your leadership, and that's to elevate and promote Tallahassee, Leon County, and support a diverse and vibrant economy. Over the last 2 years, we have built a strategic plan, tracked over 85 different indicators for our community, and the projects that we have worked have led to a $155 million economic impact. So we're very proud of the progress that we made under the first 2 years of laying some foundational documents to really guide our ways. One of those is the strategic plan. So everything that our team does can trace back to these 6 cornerstones and 3 cross-cutting strategies. You'll see in the presentation today how our work aligns back into that plan as well. It's important to note that this is a living document, so as we continue to do our work and get direction from you, we include that into our strategic and work plan and move towards these actions. In the first 2 years, we completed 19 actions. We have 49 that are currently ongoing that our team is managing, and that breeds a total that's out of 153 total actions. And to my point earlier about it being a living, breathing document, when we complete our last foundational study, which is the disparity study, we'll add those actions into this work plan as well. We have 2 divisions within our office, the Division of Business Vitality and Intelligence, and Minority Women in Small Business. And we have the team sitting here behind you, and we're really excited on those efforts and proud to have him here. In the area of business intelligence, we have 2 documents before you today. One of them is the 4th quarter economic indicator report, as well as our competitiveness report. And I just wanted to highlight a few things from each one of those today. For our employment conditions, these are really impressive numbers that you see here today. Our unemployment is at an all-time low for the last 10 years. That's 2.9%. You can see the growth by job or by industry below. Financial activities, professional, leisure, and hospitality and construction are our fastest growing job growth by industry. That construction number does not include anything that we may see as a result from Hurricane Michael, too. The Tallahassee MSA overall has a 1.9% job growth, but the most important thing there, when you pull out the public sector, you can see that the private sector is growing at 3.8%. That's very impressive, and we're really excited to be working with those businesses and engaging in them throughout those efforts. I am very pleased to present to you the 2018 Competitiveness Report. This report compares us to 11 different communities and across 25 different metrics. It allows us to look at how we're moving the needle for our strategic plan and targeted industry plan. Again, this is an annual document that we'll produce, so the next one that you see will be in December 2019, and it's an assessment tool for us as we look at benchmark ourselves against 11 different communities. 5 of those were highlighted by our strategic plan when we went through that process 2 years ago, and the remaining were picked out because they looked and mirrored Tallahassee as well. You can see we're ranked number 1 in entrepreneurial and business environment and business vitality, and our civic quality index is around, it's a ranking of a 9. But when we're doing a comparative analysis, we have to make sure we look at all that data. So you're looking at a 2016 crime data is what we've used. So next year when we go through that report, we hope to see that all the efforts that we're undertaking as a community help drive that number up. And that's probably going to be the most exciting thing about this assessment tool, allow us to see how we perform year over year. In the area of business vitality, we have over 8,000 businesses here in our community, 14% which are minority, 23% are women-owned, and we are actively engaging those through our business consultations, the academy, and the industry academies that our MWSBE team run, as well as monthly certification workshops. We're actively working to promote the business vitality through engagements such as celebrating our award-winning International Economic Development Week. For our efforts this past May, we recently accepted an award by the IEDC, so the International Economic Development Council, for our efforts during that week. This year, Florida will be celebrating Economic Development Week in February, so we'll be participating in that as well. We do Med Week, as well as Training Our Talent Series and Entrepreneur Month as well. Our last foundational document is our disparity study. To date, we've held 14 stakeholder meetings, engaged 1,600 stakeholders, and have reviewed fiscal year 12 through 16 data. Under your leadership, we have had 2 changes to the scope, and that's to develop an apprenticeship program as well as review the Harvard study on economic segregation. As we look and worked with the consultants on what these next steps are to build this last foundational document, we decided to incorporate our latest round of fiscal year data, which is FY17. This will allow us to extend the life of the study by 1 year, as well as solidify the data that drives those aspirational targets that we'll bring back towards you. We're also going to convene a county and city and blueprint work group to allow us to pour through those preliminary data of the study so that we can bring to you a sound set of unified policies. We're asking MGT to come before you in February of 2019, your next meeting, to talk to you about those preliminary report that they have before you see that at your next at the June IA meeting. We'll bring you that final report, including staff information and new policy proposals. Our goal is that everything can be implemented for the 2020 program. In the area of resiliency, so not only does vitality to us mean the growth of our businesses, it also means supporting businesses in hardships. That's through closures, reduction in labor force, man-made disasters, as well as natural disasters. During Hurricane Michael, we worked with our businesses to notify the public on those essentials that were open post the storm, so pharmacy, hardware, groceries, and gas. And this received a lot of pickup through social media, and we were very proud of the results that we were able to take for that. We also served on the FAMU Small Business Loan Program, Emergency Bridge Loan Program, where we've given almost $2 million in loans to small businesses across the region to help them since the storm. This past November, our community was also affected by a man-made tragedy at the hot yoga shooting. We pulled together those businesses at Benton Place, spoke to them about their experience as a result of that, and we did that in coordination with our partners, the Chamber, the State Department of Economic Opportunity, the landowner there, NAL Talcor, as well as FAMU Small Business Development Center, to reach to these businesses. It was the first time that they had been in the room together since that incident, and as a result, we developed a social media campaign called Experience Benton, where we encourage shoppers in our local community to go out and visit these businesses the Saturday after Black Friday, which is Small Business Saturday. Unfortunately, our video that we have to show to you tonight is not working. There's some audio issues, but we will send out that link for you, and we're continuing to promote them throughout the month of December as well. Our active projects, we are currently focusing on our 4 targeted industries, which was brought to you for approval last spring. And I am pleased to report that we have 16 active projects, mostly all in the manufacturing area. And 44% of those projects come to us from referrals from our partners or other businesses or commercial brokers. So these are all people within our community that are saying, hey, you need to go talk to the Office of Economic Vitality. 31% of those are self-generated through our business consultations, and the remainder come to us through Enterprise Florida or site selectors who are working with companies who may have an interest in a community that looks like ours. Applied Sciences, we bring this report to you over the past year. We've put together the Magnetic Task Force group, which includes private and public sector representation. It's chaired by Ricardo Snyder of Danfoss, and it is really excellent for us to have a private sector business owner step up and take the lead on beating the drum and letting us all know and remind us of what we're globally competitive and why his community chose Tallahassee. So we have done a few things to really bring attention into what we are best known for, our research within the applied sciences area. We've added a new team member to our to OEV, and that is Rebecca Sweat. She comes to us by way of Greenville, South Carolina, where she worked for a chemical company there. She worked with them on their venture capital as well as relationships within the university systems. And she, best of all, she got her doctorate right here at Florida State University at the College of Engineering. So we're really excited to have her on our team, and she has hit the ground running. In the first 30 days, Rebecca has worked with Research on Investment, and they have given us a list of 200 companies that we're combing through for a match in our industry, and we are just performing a site inventory analysis that you approved at our last meeting to take a look at, now that we're engaged with these companies, where do we put them and move that needle forward. So in February, we'll bring to you a little bit more of a robust action plan on what we've done for the first 6 months under that plan. We will be sponsoring the Magnetics Conference, which is held down in Orlando this year, to again broaden our industry presence. A lot of these folks know about the Mag Lab, but they don't know about the opportunities that may be here to set up a footprint. So we're really excited to be launching these efforts. Again, going back to building a broad industry presence, we're focusing on our communications and marketing efforts. We're on these 4 platforms of social media, so I encourage you to like and follow us and share our content too, as we all work to let people know what Tallahassee-Leon County has to offer. Our earned media this has been the most we've had this quarter for the Office of Economic Vitality. We're very proud of that. And we're putting together a plan right now for a media ad buy over the next year. And also upcoming is the Tallahassee Business Journal, which 850 produces. That'll be in your January issue. We're talking with Choose Tallahassee. Right, you may know them as Marketing for Boomers. They're going through a 2.0 phase where they're looking at marketing 8 to 80s, so going a lot of what Blueprints brought to the table. So we're talking about them, about forming that partnership and engaging in that effort. We're building a marketing campaign specifically for that applied sciences and advanced manufacturing as the magnetic capital of the world. We're going through a website redesign and partnering with Florida Trends next year. You may remember 3 years ago, we had a full insert into that magazine that showed Tallahassee as going through a renaissance. In 2020, we will again have that January insert, And the most exciting part of that is that it marks the start of the Blueprint 2020 program. So it's a great opportunity to highlight the work that we've done over the last 3 years, because we've done a lot of work in the past 3 years, and what we're going to continue to do over the next 5 to 10. Most importantly, we couldn't do all the work that we do without the partnership from the collaborators and partners around our community, and we're very excited to be working with them as we work to let the state, region, and local community know that Tallahassee, Leon County is Florida's capital for business.
Okay, any questions for Christina? Any comments?
Nice first.
Commissioner Lindley, and then followed by Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you so much. There's so much good that's going on. I'm really thrilled about that. The other night at our county commission meeting, we had a great report from CareerSource, and a lot of it had to do with workforce development, but particularly trying to get businesses engaged in apprenticeship programs. And I know it's premature when you're reaching out and doing the sales to companies that are coming in, and we're trying to find physical locations and doing that inventory, but I think we need all hands on deck to try to get businesses back in the business of helping with apprenticeships, which is just part of the whole big, I think, kind of current shift towards getting young people and others involved in an array of work that's not always college-driven, but they do need training. So please, I hope everybody on this committee can support the idea of making sure apprenticeships come into the conversation every single time you speak with someone about locating here.
Okay, Commissioner Proctor, followed by Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I echo sentiments expressed by Commissioner Lindley on the apprenticeship. I wanted to ask on the 2019 February meeting, would that include 2017 data when MGT comes to us?
They'll have that complete by then, yes, Commissioner. And the county city blueprint work group will have just started the work of their review, so it's a great time to have a check-in with you for the preliminary results.
One of the data points you mentioned was the 14% minority spending. At a public meeting last, I believe Thursday before last, the question was raised, can you all please extract and break out component elements and parts of 14%? Women, blacks, Asian, that was a request. And I wanted to be a little bit more specific than I was able to convey on that particular night. And then my final point, Mr. Chairman, while we're in this area, commissioners, you all know that 32304 is in Tallahassee. It's in Leon County. And I believe that there ought to be a strategy devised that we're not only with apprenticeship, but as we're talking about money being spent, that there is something that we've got to do to elevate this being the dark hole of the state of Florida in terms of its economic, very, it has no pulse. And we need to make sure that that's a pulsating rhythm through that. And I would like to ask for, hearing other comments, some kind of special targeted 32304 initiative to address Florida's weakest economic center, and as well as its weakest third grade reading spot. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Christina, great job. I mean, you all are doing a lot of great work, and I realize I'm coming into this midstream, but one thing that I wanted to point out is, I mean, I think you said 8,500 businesses in this community, correct? And then
Yes.
14% of them are minority owned?
Yes.
I don't know and maybe you've got this data already, but I don't know where that stands relative to other similar cities. For example, that might be great in a city that has a very low percentage of minority population, but it might be it might need a lot of work if what's the stat I'm looking for? The per capita minority-owned business among the minority population. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
That kind of data will be very helpful, because for cities that are similar to us, that have a similar demographic, a similar percentage of minority, if we are doing really well with the percentage of minority-owned businesses relative to them, that'd be very illuminating. But right now, I don't really know where we stand with cities similar to ours.
I have that data on a state and national level, and when you look at the women-owned businesses, we're on par with the state of Florida and on a national level, if not a little bit better than the national average. When you're looking at the minority-owned, and we're probably lower than the state average, but higher than the national average. But we'll definitely take a look at that as far as comparative communities.
It'd be good to look and see what other similar cities of our makeup demographically are doing. If their percent of minority-owned businesses is 25%, that would lead us to assume that we've got a lot of work to do. But right now, I don't have the data to make that determination.
Okay, Mr. Penderby?
Yeah, just to add to what Christina said, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, what we can do also, if you look at the communities that we compare ourselves to in the competitiveness report, we'll cross-check how we're performing with those communities as well. That would be a logical, I think, in line with what you're asking for, and we'll get that report back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And to all.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, what we do when you have a question? I know you knew.
Thank you.
All right. You got it.
Great job with what you've just presented, and thank you all for me being the past chair of the Capital City Chamber. We've enjoyed the working relationship with you. I may have missed it, but I didn't see the Capital City Chamber logo with your partners, but I'm sure that it's there. I'm sure it's there. Just wanted to say great job, and as we continue to work together, we'll make sure that when chambers are called to the table, all chambers are called, because you do know we have 3 in the city, and 2 deal with specifically minority and small and women-owned businesses.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox. It's interesting because and Darrell can affirm this, he was at the meeting earlier this afternoon at Lively where we talked about this apprenticeship issue, and it was a planning meeting for an event that we've got coming up on the 29th of January, I believe, where we're going to have a discussion about how we develop apprenticeship programs in Tallahassee and Leon County. And so we had a round table of general contractors and subcontractors and Lively staff, the apprenticeship coordinator from the State Department of Education. And I tell you, we have got a serious workforce shortage, particularly in the construction trades in this area. They were bemoaning the fact that they're having a tough time finding qualified, quality employees in the construction trades. And so we have got, as a community, we're going to have a serious conversation about that and how we address that issue. And we did have a unfortunately, Commissioner Williams-Cox, we didn't have a representative from the Capital City Chamber. I had talked to Katrina about being there. She may not have been able to. She's out of town. Oh, she's out of town? Okay. But Gina was there from Big Bend and Laura representing the Tallahassee Chamber. And so there will be an event. It will be hosted by Lively on the 29th of January, where we will start to have some conversation in earnest about developing apprenticeships in our community, where we can start addressing some of the workforce issues that we're experiencing. That will be exacerbated by what we've experienced with Hurricane Michael, because a lot of our construction industry workers are headed west, and they're abandoning Tallahassee. And so we've got a serious issue to address there.
Can I just say at one point on that?
And then Commissioner Dozier.
A lot of it is, I mean, we really do have to partner because businesses aren't really used to coming up with the extra funds or the structure to start an apprenticeship program. So we can't just nag them to death and say, you have to do it because we want you to, and it's time is of the essence. But so I think that's going to be that's where our governments come in, is trying to help them figure out a way to get them started.
Yeah,
and we know
that was the essence of the discussion
and this
today
was
and
needed
where we're going.
yesterday.
And they're eager to do it, actually.
But they need a framework.
Yeah.
And some bucks, probably.
They may need that. But that's where we're going with this whole effort. So
Great. That sounds fabulous.
Commissioner Linden. Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and please forgive my tardiness. And please do stop me if you all have covered any of this. I am really sorry that I missed our new director of OEV. Congratulations, Christina, who has been representing us exceptionally at the Innovation Park Strategic Planning Meeting, Regional Planning Council, and others for the last couple months, even though we haven't had a meeting. So forgive me if you already covered that and anything else about this, because I don't want to repeat what you all have already said. But on the talent gap, and I'm glad to know about the events in January, what we heard from Jim McShane at CareerSource, an update at our commission meeting on Tuesday night, so you all may have heard the same, was that there is funding for training programs through CareerSource from the state, but construction is not ranking high enough to get those training dollars because people have to post job openings on their site. So welding is getting the training dollars, but when I ask a question about construction programs themselves, it is because we can't get that funding unless construction companies post those openings. So there are some really, I think, communication pieces, soft pieces that we might be able to do. The communication, and I'm sure you've already covered this, but particularly during Hurricane Michael, and the shooting was exceptional from OEV, we're really stepping that up. So I think whether it comes out of that meeting on the 29th or out of this board, I think OEV and our partners may be able to help push those messages so that we get all the funding and opportunities. I mean, there's not one solution for this, right? So that was just something that I had not heard before. I knew there's some state statute issues and others that hold us back on apprenticeships, but that was a really critical piece that we're not getting the funding for those programs. So thank you about that. And Mr. Chair, I had one other issue, but if there's more discussion on the talent question, I can save it for a moment.
Okay.
I saw Commissioner Proctor.
Commissioner Proctor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I believe that Chairman's announcement that there is a shortage of critical need for construction in whatever the other areas, it compels that we give consideration to creating a new MBE slot. We give points in our contracting for companies that have MBE. We need to get our legal teams to create a new mind frame based upon the crisis that we're experiencing. We can't be a healthy community if we ain't got people know how to lay a brick. We just ain't who we look like if you can't tie your shoes up. We have a critical need, and I think that our legal should outsource this to get specialists to make sure that we're doing this tight and right, and that we won't have any legal backlash for giving points to those companies which afford the critical development of. A few months ago, for instance, there was common workers in a ditch behind Bethel AME Church, and none of them looked like the people from that community. The work was not complicated. It was just putting rocks in the cages and putting them in a ditch. And when you ignore people for generations and years, you won't be able to find anybody in our community who knows how to put rocks in a cage, because we've allowed others to come to the community, and we have actually denied the experience of learning the maturation process of growing from putting rocks in a cage. So you have to do what henceforth? Go outside to get someone to come here from Orlando or wherever and put rocks in a cage. We ought, in the interest of 32304, if there are added points for people who come from that zip code, I don't know if that's legal or not, but if there's a way to give points for those who are developing and quickening the nerve center of life there, we ought to give points for that. So I want to offer that as a recommendation today on a very serious point. If this is a crisis, then it requires a response from us that we not languish with inaction and silence. And if a motion is required, Mr. Chairman, that we would scope that out, give consideration to it. I would make a motion at this time that we would allow for our legal team to look at the category of apprenticeship in our contracting going forward, and with respect to a focused, intentional effort to develop our our community, and in particular, even additional focus on 32304. That's a motion.
Okay. I think what we're going to do, Commissioner Proctor, if you're okay with this, is just give staff direction to go forward with that and then bring us something back that we can consider.
Well, however you desire for me to convey that. If have I said enough?
Just a couple.
Pingree.
Yes, just a couple of thoughts. First and foremost, the consideration of an apprenticeship program is something that MGT is contractually working on right now. Our legal team and teams, which includes not just IA Attorney Kinney, but also the county attorney and the city attorney, are working on that initiative as well. So I do think that is underway. I know it is underway. That's part one of what I thought might be helpful to add. Two, I do want to sort of also listening to the discussion at the county commission meeting a couple nights ago. We are working very closely with Jim McShane, not just through Leon Works, which is, of course, a city and county program now, and not just city and county, but expanding to the communities that are outside of us, acknowledging the shortages that you spoke to, Mr. Chairman, and the need for a skilled workforce to engage and do so expeditiously. But we closely work with Jim McShane. I do note that Christina sits on one of his councils. In fact, and I don't think it was in the update, but we're actually working with Career Source Capital Region on mechanisms to tie potential employees to potential employers far more expeditiously even than the system and the platforms that are in use today. So a lot of exciting things that are going on, and would be, I do believe, though, to your point, Commissioner Proctor, I do believe that tie of the apprenticeship program and the creation of a new one aligned with the disparity study is something that the consultant is working on absolutely right now.
Right.
That's helpful.
And we are also, Commissioner Proctor, through the city looking to possibly replicate a policy from the city of St. Petersburg down in Pinellas County, where they have done that. They require that a contractor who wins a successful bid have a percentage of their workforce for apprenticeships. And so we're looking at that policy to see if that's something that we can adopt for the city of Tallahassee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, when we worked for Governor Childs, you remember that Orlando was doing that in the mid-'90s, and that it has spread I-4 over to St. Pete is great, but we've seen that done before down in Orlando. Yeah. And Mr. Chairman, my chairman is listening in the hope that the county will accede to and maybe agree with and mirror and make sure our policies are mirroring one the other from the county, the city. We're doing blueprint. This is a good conversation, so I'm appreciative of hearing your comments.
Okay, so we'll have staff bring us something back for our next meeting. Commissioner Nick Maddox.
Yeah, briefly. I'll be very brief. To that point, just this week after the board meeting, Jim McShane did send over a copy of the language he probably sent to the city in reference to the apprenticeship program being a part of our contracting efforts.
Okay.
As well. So there's no need to, let's say, reinvent the wheel.
Right.
If the city and the county is going to do it, then Blueprint can likely follow the same bus in trying to get it done too. So I do understand the MGT is coming back, but if it's an effort that we can all agree on on our respective boards, I'm pretty sure that sitting at this table we make the same type of agreement. So I look forward to seeing it come back. I do think it's a great idea. Apprenticeship is very important to our young people here in Leon County.
And Mr. Chairman, on point, I think that it's interesting what Commissioner Maddox has indicated, and I'm wondering legally, do we get more leeway to do this apprenticeship? Can we push the envelope stronger as a blueprint organization versus being the city or the county? Would there be prohibitions against or inhibitions for us doing it? But one of the things that we absolutely get to create an extraordinary synergy is that when the county and the city commissions are sitting here, there's absolutely no reason why the cutting-edge leader of policy like this should come from this body as we sit collectively if there's reasons that we can't do it as the county or the city. So my anticipation for the collective wills, hearts, minds at this table, that we can do something that's very strong. And I look forward to that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Any other questions, comments for Christina? Ben, item number 6,
Okay.
status report on IA infrastructure project.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, IA, for that conversation. We look forward to reporting back on everything that's happening in the realm of economic vitality. So not.
I think we need a motion
Oh,
on number
did-
5.
I'll proudly move
Okay.
to accept her report.
I'll
Thank you.
second it.
Motion by Commissioner Deloge, thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Lindley. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so similar vein to the robust conversation that we just had about economic vitality, all that has happened, the tremendous amount that's going on and where we're sort of looking to in the near-term future and a little bit beyond that even. And as we covered in many of the one-on-one briefings in preparation for this meeting with each commissioner, this is a really great opportunity to spend a little bit more time as well to honestly say, express some gratitude to you as a body for having already leapt, if you will, into preparations for the 2020, the robust round of projects, the 27 projects that constitute the Blueprint 2020 infrastructure, and all the activities that have occurred to prioritize them. As I had said before, I think I'm repeating myself now. Autumn Calder, who's the director of Blueprint, does have a very concise and I think a good, modest look back, status of where we are in the current fiscal year and where we're going to hit the ground running in 2020 when it arrives, as does the revenues.
Okay, Autumn?
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. I'm pleased to share this update on the Blueprint projects and to provide a brief recap of all the work that the board has done to prepare for the 2020 sales tax extension. These Blueprint projects are spread throughout the community, and many have been completed or are underway, as shown by the green lines. And when you add in the projects that will be initiated through our 5-year CIP, you see the injection of these sales tax revenues going all countywide. Since the referendum in 2014, the IA Board has achieved many significant milestones. Shown here is a summary of the IA Board's actions by year. These actions set up the Blueprint 2020 implementation plan that was approved earlier this summer. A few key actions included identifying Capital Circle Southwest as the #1 project, 6 projects receiving annual allocations, advanced funding to take advantage of leveraging opportunities, and finally, by the end of 2017, the prioritization of all of our projects was completed. Let's pause for a moment on the prioritized list of Blueprint 2020 projects. The first objective was to send a clear and consistent message to FDOT on our local priorities for roadways. They asked us and our other local partners to align our individual priorities. By aligning, we have a greater probability of receiving state funds. We see that alignment reflected in the prioritized list for Blueprint's large-scale roadway improvements. Secondly, we look to prioritize the community enhancement, connectivity, and quality of life projects. We also call those the CCQs. At the June 2017 meeting, the board approved the Blueprint Promise criteria for ranking these 10 projects. The Promise criteria focused on honoring the commitment made to voters by prioritizing projects which met multiple objectives of the sales tax extension. The criteria included water quality improvements, transportation enhancements, expansion of parks and recreation areas, investment in economic development, and lastly, project readiness. This prioritization fed into the implementation plan approved by the board in June of this year, and then also into our fiscal year 19 capital allocation. However, it is designed to be flexible. For example, if an opportunity to leverage sales tax dollars arises for a lower-ranked project, the board will be provided the best information and options for initiation to be able to capture the opportunity. 2018 was focused on presenting implementation plan options for the board's consideration. In June, a strategy to advance projects through a $100 million bond was approved. This strategy was reflected in the advanced funding of several Blueprint 2020 projects in fiscal year 19. This is a little bit more detail on the implementation plan that was approved earlier this year. It includes a $100 million bond in fiscal year 2022. It initiates and completes 18 projects between 2019 and 2024. In addition to the high-ranked projects that could be funded by sales tax revenues alone, it fully funds 4 additional key projects. Those 4 projects are the Airport Gateway, Wolani Boulevard, Bannerman Road, and the Monroe-Adams Corridor Placemaking projects. To prepare the projects advanced by the $100 million bond in fiscal year 22, the approved implementation plan is included in our approved fiscal year 19 capital improvement plan. So let's talk a little bit about that capital improvement program. In September, the IA board approved a $22 million capital allocation to fiscal year 19. I'd like to highlight a few of the Blueprint 2020 projects that were advanced consistent with the board-approved implementation plan. But I'll skip over 2 key ones that have had a lot of activity, which is Wolani and the Orange Meridian Placemaking, because Ben will go into more details on further agenda items. The Airport Gateway project begins with the Southwest Area Transportation Plan, which is a project jointly funded by Blueprint and the CRTPA. The data and recommendations coming from this plan will inform the improvements that will be implemented as part of the Airport Gateway project. That project is more than halfway complete, with the next phase focusing on North and South Lake Bradford Roads and Spring Hill Road. We're currently developing the scope of services for the Bannerman Road Project Development and Environment Study, or the PD&E, with advertisement anticipated for early this spring. The study will include a feasibility assessment of widening from Tequesta to Bullheadley roads. Once the consultant is on board, we'll report back to the IA on the progress. The study should take about 15 months to complete. Since fiscal year 2017, the board has approved an annual allocation of $300,000 to do the planning and design for the Greenway and bike route projects, so that when we get to 2020, we'll have some that are shovel-ready. Specifically, we've been working on the Lake Jackson Greenway and the Lake Jackson South Greenway, but we've also been working on Capitol Circle Southwest, which includes the Debbie Lightsey Nature Park. This park will be a new recreation area on the southwest part of our community, opening up opportunities to share and educate about the unique wetlands in the Bradford Brooks chain of lakes. And finally, a last update on our #1 priority project, Capitol Circle Southwest. The FDOT tentative work plan was just released, and we're pleased to see our project fully funded in 2021 and 2024. By adding in the prior year funding, these future allocations bring the total amount of the FDOT contribution for this project to over $115 million. That's the largest amount a Blueprint project has seen. This highlights the success of our partnership with FDOT, and by aligning our priorities with our partner agencies, we anticipate these cost-sharing opportunities to increase. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Autumn? Any discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the report?
Chairman, I do have discussion on readiness on this report. Thank you.
Commissioner Proctor.
Sorry about that.
You're recognized.
Commissioners, I want you all to know that under the point of qualifications number 2, which was shared, I heard everything in those elements, for which, in my perspective, the Leon County Fairground project should have been included in the 5-year thing. I realize that I've been run over multiple times by you, but I've not yet been run over by the new commissioners at the table. Some old commissioners ran me over. But I want to make the point that as I sit in front of Commissioner Deloge, we're very much alike, and we're very much not alike. And what makes us very much alike is that we very much want good things for our district, District 4 and District 1.
And you're both good looking and smart.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. Can I go on the record, please?
There is a major dissimilarity between us in our careers. And if you look at the Bannerman Road and, the mom and pops, the Wendy's, the Chick-fil-A's, that piece of dirt there at Bannerman and Thomasville Road, Commissioner Deloge and everything that he desires for his growth and for the spirit of it to transform. We both want the same thing. We just get different results at this table for what we want. I want something like that as well at the fairground. It's an empty sheet of property. It's ready. You heard what staff has shared with us, Amber's has shared with us on what makes these projects qualify. It got every last thing. But much too often, though both of these commissioners, we want stuff, I don't never get nothing commensurate to the need and the longevity from which these pieces of dirt languish and have stood in a disparate treatment from this board. I think that it's a good thing. I support, and I really love the desserts at Mom and Dad. You know, you get 3 for $15. That's real good. I love desserts, and I go up there and get some too. But I shouldn't have to drive 15 miles to go up there and get it. But if I want some of the best dessert in town, I have to go. And you know the bus don't go up there, Nick. You can't catch the bus. It won't take you there. So you got to drive to go up there to get it. We want some of these things, the convenience, the access to and for citizens down there. And this is why I want to echo, and it would be, I would be negligent to not point out again that even though I know it's not the city's name, it's the county's name, where we have a piece of property that does not have indoor toilets, and the public pays good money. I've used those facilities to host public events again and again. They charge you real well to use that facility. And I don't know, we don't get a discount because your mama got to go outside to the bathroom to use it. And it's just premium price, old facility. But as that facility may have Leon County's name and ownership, but people have approved on this sales tax for the fairground beautification and modernization. It's on this list, but it ain't the one that's being funded and going forward. I'm asking for a consideration because I heard Amber say that, I heard you use the word that autumn. This category, autumn. Yeah. I'm sorry, Autumn, I can't see that. I'm cheating. I'm trying to peep down there and see your name so fast.
I was looking for Amber.
You know what I mean? John, you're supposed to hit me like that and say, Amber, And thank you, Mayor. And you said that this category number 2 is designed to be flexible. And when I hear stuff like that, designed to be flexible, that means that this project can move, opportunities can occur. And I think that to the extent that located, and I think that but for its geographic location in this community, there would be a different response. But I specifically believe that because it is located strictly where it is, surrounded by Rickard, Fairview, Oak Ridge, all the places where people have free and reduced lunch and Title I's on their names. We need a piece of dirt that people who go to a Title I school can see the same stuff and have access during lunch period as children who go to Childs, who go to Killarn Lakes and live around that area. That's the balance when I think that when we're focused on developing and putting our money in places, it's the holistic thing in what development inspires in a region, in an area. It will be a game changer. And I'm asking commissioners, and unless our new commissioners have taken an oath that completely binds you to the limited vision of your past predecessors, then you all not put blinders on. And I'm asking for the sake of new commissioners, and if your oath did not bind you to those limitations, that you would expand your sights, your visions, and feel the heart of people who desiring to look at a piece of dirt that has promise. It could be so much more, and it, just one day could possibly be a third of what Bannerman project looks like up there on Bannerman and Thomasville. We want some of that. We deserve some of that. I hope in someplace in your beings that you can hear my cry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Daly and then Commissioner Dozier. Oh, Mayor Daley, I'm sorry.
Two things. First of all, it's great to see everybody, and we are really excited at the city to work with you. I have two items in particular. First and foremost, comment on Commissioner Proctor's idea. My own personal thought, I think it is time that we sit down and think about a bigger picture for the fairgrounds. This is not something we're going to solve in 3 months or 6 months per se. I am hesitant to move forward with just modernizing what we have out there without sitting down and thinking big picture of where we want to go. If we look at the Monroe Street corridor, we actually have 3 very large opportunities, probably the last opportunities of this magnitude in downtown, starting with I-10-27 coming down. You've got the Northwood Center, which we're all kind of curious what's going on out there. You have, I'm trying to remember where the state office was. No, that's Northwood Center, right?
Yeah.
And then I call it the old Tallahassee.
Tallahassee Mall.
Right, Tallahassee
Center
Mall.
of Tallahassee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Center of Tallahassee. Center of Tallahassee. And then the other piece right there next to Raw Middle School.
What's my prize for getting that?
What's that?
What's my prize for getting
Right.
that?
So we have those two pieces. And then the third piece is the fairgrounds. And I think that we should have a long conversation about what can the fairgrounds be? What would we like it to be jointly? Look, I think we've got incredible synergy between the city and the county. I'll be the first to admit, it's the county's got to make the decision whether or not y'all want to entertain this conversation and respect that. But I'm willing to come to the table. I mean, we've spent a lot of time on the campaign trail together. You all have made similar statements, at least interested in sitting down and doing that brainstorming session. What could it be if we were to go down this road? And so I'm willing to have that conversation, and I think it would be very healthy. Now, my second point is very technical. Autumn, if you look on page 3 of 5, the restrooms at FAMU Way Playground under the Cascade Trail segment 3. Again, very technical. When the weather is very nice and the humidity is low, because we have the soft landing pad out there underneath the playground equipment, believe it or not, little kids' rubber tennis shoes rubbing on the soft landing pad with low humidity creates electric shock. It's just static electricity. So I know that nowadays, and we might have already done this, can we check into it to make sure that it is properly working, whether it's a coating or some type of a spray? It might be something as easy as a quick spray, but the last thing we want is for families to go out and have a miserable experience at our playground because their kids are out running around having fun and then touch the playground equipment and get shocked because of the static electricity. It's actually pretty common, I've come to learn, at playgrounds that now use the soft landing material that we have. So can we just double check on that?
Absolutely.
Great.
That's it? That's it. All right, thank you. Mayor Daley, Commissioner Dozier, and then Commissioner Deloge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, reflecting on our county time, Daley, Dozier, and Deloge were interchangeable at night, so I thought you were about to do that. But
It's called the 3 Ds.
yeah, by some of our colleagues, it is. So Autumn, Amber, might be the same. I mentioned our new OEV director earlier. I was remiss to say we've got a lot of new faces around the table, and I'm really excited. Thank you, Mayor Daley, for mentioning that, to work with all of you. I think we've all referenced, certainly for the county commission in just this last week, from our retreat to our commission meeting, others, a lot of opportunities for us to work together on ongoing issues and some new issues. So we're really excited about that. I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think that was the tone we shared at our meetings this week. I'm glad you brought up the playground. I think that had been in some conversation in the past, but I'm really glad to look at that. And with the fairgrounds, I also appreciate the way you framed that, because to me, and I think I may have mentioned this briefly when we talked about the strategic site selection with the OEV piece a few months ago, but not specifically about the fairgrounds, that there are a lot of other parcels that may be ranked in a different way. It may not be manufacturing. We were going to look at the strategic site selection first for magnetics and associated industries, right, Christina? So if we expanded that strategic site selection, it may pick up some of these other properties. And I think that is a conversation that we may want in the future. But I'm not saying a commercial use or private sector use is the best use for that site. It just may give us some opportunities. And I wanted to mention that because I do believe this was early in my time on the county, there was some ideas about moving the fairgrounds someplace else. There might be a higher and better use for that site, but I'm also concerned about our infrastructure projects, just quality of life, any of them. We've advance funded a lot of things, so we have to be careful with some of the remaining things on the list and do this in a very thoughtful way. So I just want us to support your comments on that. And I think part of that, this is, I don't think a direction or anything. The county staff will be working on this, but part of our retreat this week was a discussion about social infrastructure. And we, without going into that, it may be something of interest to this board, but it's a way to assess areas or projects that deal with social infrastructure. And the simplest way I can think of right now is CRA board in the past funded a lot of improvements in Providence neighborhood, sidewalks, community centers, and other things. The argument would be that a neighborhood that is improved in that way also has has more social cohesiveness. They can represent themselves better. You see a lot of factors go into that. I'm giving a cursory explanation now. But I believe we saw some evidence of that in just the Gateway conversation. They really represented themselves well and were in that discussion. And it resonated with me. So as the county administrator and his staff look at social infrastructure in a way to assess our programs and projects from that angle, I just wanted to mention it today that it may be something of interest to our city colleagues, and I think it would be a very interesting approach to look at a lot of our projects, particularly the quality of life, and it may help us in areas like the fairgrounds or others. So I'm not sure if there's an appetite for that to bring back a description or share some of that information with our city colleagues, but I'd love for our Blueprint to stay engaged with the county staff on that issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier. Commissioner Deloge, and then Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple things, Mr. Mayor, great points, and Commissioner Proctor, I'm in sync with you 100%. We should be able to do some of the fairgrounds, and if you remember historically, actually, there was an act of Congress where we had a piece of property across from the flea market that we were going to move, and the hindrance became building all those steel buildings or replacing them. We ran into some glitches, and it was a little too expensive. But now that we've got a District 3 commissioner with some vision, we can tackle that North Monroe corridor. No, but I think it's a great point, which is that...
Was he Chatty Cathy at the work, his first workshop, little Chatty Cathy? Okay.
We couldn't shut him up, yeah. But I think that you're right, the city center...
Get a hot flash over here. Something like that.
The city center and the Northwood Mall, Tallahassee Mall, Northwood Mall, right. You're right. Those both offer huge potentials for us as a body to look and see what our opportunities are. We have looked, and I'd love to see staff maybe say, here's what's been talked about for the fairgrounds in the past, and here's something we could go forward. My only caution is we have spent an awful lot of time up until this point prioritizing things, putting things in sync, and as you said, Mr. Mayor, you know, we need to look at this and absolutely address it. And I think I don't want to, you know, it's not. What I don't think we can do is suddenly throw it in the mix and fix it. But I would love to see staff come back with some suggestions about what are the choices, where can we go, and what's the best way to address that. As we found out the other night, there's $1.2 billion being spent on the south side in a variety of different projects, and it's really going to be transformational. I mean, all the Orange Avenue things and the things like that. So we might as well wrap the fairgrounds into that. And I grew up going to Capitol Stadium down there, Leon High School, playing football on Friday nights, and so not me. Football? No, I did not, but I watched. And
I wanted to see some film.
And so
check him out.
But I'm in full agreement of saying, and those three projects in particular, I think Commissioner Daley looks a little, or Mayor Daley looks a little larger there with his Northwood Mall, Tallahassee Mall, and the fairgrounds. I mean, those are big anchors in our community, and I think we can do a better job figuring out what the future looks like for them. But I'm sensitive to the process and the progress and where we are today, and I'm not willing to unwind in an effort to try and reshuffle the deck. Thank you.
Just on point, and one of you all may be able to answer this from the county commission. Didn't you all do a study not too very long ago that addressed that very issue about what could be done with the fairground?
No, it's not sitting on the shelf. It was in our meeting last week.
Mr. Chair, we actually, last week, we were talking about doing a workshop. Actually, I asked for a workshop on the fairgrounds. And because of the study that we just did not very recently, the county administrator sent it out to all of us, and I decided that we didn't need that workshop because everything we needed to know was in that study. If the city commissioners are interested in that study, I would, I don't think any of us would have any problem sharing it. Just quickly on point to what you said, Mayor Daley said something a minute ago, and that, it's a county property, but if the county was willing for us to have a community conversation about it, that the city would be willing to have that conversation. Seems like me, since 12 million is here, this would be a perfect place to have the conversation. Whenever we decide to take that step. So we're all on the same page on what we want to do on the site, what the study actually says. So everybody can have the same vision that's in that study that we have at the county. So he brought up a great point. You asked a great question. And I would actually suggest, Mr. Chair, if you could, talk to the county administrator about sharing that study with the city. Thank you, Mr. Chair, on point.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Maddox. Commissioner Williams-Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say to Commissioner Proctor, the only oath that I signed was to be a good steward to the people, and I think that the time has come to take a look at that land called the fairground. And it is quite expensive to rent, but I understand they don't pay an expensive rent to charge me an expensive rent to rent. So I think it is time to take a look at it. And as things are happening on the South Side, and let me just preface that with it. I'm a 30-year-plus resident of the South Side, and I watch things happen, and sometimes it's like watching grass grow. But I understand that new grass has been planted, and it is time for us to plant grass everywhere and help make it grow. So I think that, as you said, Commissioner Deloche, it's time to wrap it all together so that we're not building hodgepodges, that we're doing a real comprehensive plan for the future of the South Side, as we have done with other parts of the city. It's now time. I said it a long time ago, the South will rise again. And it sounds like it's time. Be careful what you're saying. It's time for the.
Commission, call a question.
It's time.
Don't let it ride.
It's time for the South Side in Tallahassee, Florida, to rise. And of course, we know the demographics of that current South Side, so it will be a different kind of rising.
Commissioner, I picked a different slogan.
You get my message. Come on down to the South Side and let's do some great things. So I'm just adding my voice to, as a member of a new member of the City Commission, I'm on board to doing what we need to do to make sure that the fairgrounds and everything are part of the plan for the South Side that is comprehensive.
On point, Mr. Chair, just real
Commissioner
quick.
Deloge.
If we do have something brought back, just as there are some legal issues relative to the the Fairgrounds Authority or whatever their governing body is, and I know we've banged heads with them in the past, so let's make sure we at least know what we're walking into before we start
I
going
agree.
too far down the road.
I agree.
Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might follow up.
Yes, Commissioner Carter. Did you have a? Okay. Let me let
Y'all defer, Commissioner
Matlow.
Oh, I want to echo 90% of what Commissioner William Cox said. That one phrase I don't think I can say and get out of this room. So I would like to see the report that the county has on the fairgrounds and be just kind of brought up to the date on the history that we've had there, since I don't know it and we are new. And somewhat to your point, we are new commissioners and we were elected to come in here and look at things differently, or just from a different perspective. And, I'm eager to share our perspective, and I appreciate the hard work that staff has done so far. But I don't think that means any decision is necessarily finite, and we should, take another look at everything that's been discussed as we get brought up to speed. And I'd also echo what Mayor Daley said. I think he made some good points there.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Matlow.
Well,
Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you. Commissioner Deloge mentioned a point of there being some complexities, possibly, that property. I've talked to Mr. Harvey, our director of the fairground and association which they work with, and a gentleman, former county commissioner named Lee Voss, and those folks. We have had a practice at the county of areas where there's been a need for commission level intervention to maybe appoint, or when we get to that stage, a commissioner to represent our body. Perhaps one of the more, even more extremely complicated issues of this community was Falls Chase some years ago. The county commission took their commissioner, who they believed in, one named Bill Proctor, to negotiate that. Today, that piece of property is a Walmart and a bunch of other stuff. With experience, and it's not bragging when you've been there and done that, but I would be willing to represent this body if this commissioner's desired. I'm real good at complicated stuff, and I think that the fairground could move forward, notwithstanding its complexities. I just offer myself if you need me.
Thank you. Were you done? You want to put your?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
thought you were looking to speak again. Commissioner Dozier.
New driver.
Sometimes we are just tossed in without all the logistics. Yes, all good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to wait to share one other thought after the fairgrounds discussion. Although, given Commissioner Proctor's comments just now, I do want to recognize that we are in a very different time with Blueprint and OEV staff and being in the same house. So I think that getting into a discussion like that may be look very different now than it did with Falls Chase or other things like that. So I like the direction and the conversation we're going right now. The wildly different comment that I was going to make, or different subject, I should say, is I really love the idea of skatable art. And I just wanted to highlight, we do have a couple of things in the project updates about the history, working with COCA, the History and Cultural Trail, working with COCA on the art project, and the skatable art stood out to me. I think that we're really seeing the benefit of having a lot of those types of projects along Capitol Cascades Trail, and we will see that. I hope we look at this as an example of what we can do in other spaces in town and other projects. So I just wanted to pick that up as we get into quality of life projects in the future. I wouldn't mind a time when we can reflect back on what we did on all of, from Cascades Park all the way through the trail once that's completed, to see how we worked with groups from the jail, well, I guess that was CRA, but from the history with Smoky Hollow down through FAMU Way, because I think we do have some opportunities going forward as we get into the sense of place in other areas of town. So just wanted to mention that, and if that was of interest to the staff or the board, I'd love to see more in the future. Thanks.
Move acceptance of the report.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Deloge, second by Commissioner Dozier. Any further questions, discussions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Motion carries, what's the vote? 10 to 1. Commissioner Proctor in opposition. Item number 7, approval of a funding request to implement improvements to the Orange Avenue Meridian
Placemaking project. Okay, so
now we do have a speaker that is asked to speak, and I want to give him the opportunity to speak before we take up the item. If that would be okay.
yes, sir. Would you like for me to? I have a brief presentation. Would you like for me to give that, or take the speaker first, or illuminate the body and the speaker?
Let's do the presentation, and then we'll
Okay.
take the speaker before we take any action on the item.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. And I'll be relatively brief with this, but just piggybacking on a couple of different things that we've heard today and things that have been highlighted during this week, although it feels like weeks ago. When you talk about advanced funding Blueprint 2020 projects and how we have not missed any opportunity to incorporate that into the current capital project budget, when you talk about social infrastructure and placemaking, and global best practices and activating spaces, it really all comes together in this project. Now, this is Ultimately, this project, I think it's the next slide, is going to be the new super stop for Star Metro. It's a $4.1 million project. But there was a recognition, two recognitions earlier this year. Number one, this would be something that we could advance fund to the tune of about $1 million. Begin the planning for the super stop. There's 3 different components to it. You see there's stormwater improvements in the east drainage ditch. Of course, there's an enhancement of the Orange Avenue stormwater pond, which is across the street. And then there's the Star Metro super stop contribution and site itself. That site, which we're going to talk about a little bit, is on the northwest corner of Orange and Meridian. It's actually a Leon County parcel. So one thing that happened earlier this year in the summer months was a recognition we need to move forward and activating and getting ready for 2020 in advance. At the same time, there was an appreciation and a realization there's a lot going on that little piece of land. Some of it really kind of good. Community asset, and we're going to talk about that. And some of it, not quite so good. And you see some evidence of here, photographic evidence. There is a preponderance of trash. It's difficult to maintain in that regard. There is some sightline issues, overgrown trees, not limbed up, lack of lighting, overgrown area. There's dumping, there's burning, et cetera. The property as it stands today, certainly when we get ready to build the ultimate permanent super stop site, there are challenges that must be addressed, and they will be addressed. But what can we do today? What can we do today? That's sort of, that was informing your staff review based on your guidance and direction. And so we went out and we met with the community and said, okay, well, what's going on there now? What's activated right now that is really good, that is desirous of the community and adds value on this vacant piece of property? And you see food distribution, there are food trucks, there's yard sales, there's congregation, there's a community element and mingling that occurs that is wonderful. Wonderful in this area and on this location, and wonderful in all different areas in our community. Okay, how can we maximize and optimize that while minimizing the other? Do it within existing budget. These were sort of the concepts that we were challenged with over the last couple of months, and we did quite a bit. We held a series of community meetings, blueprint staff, planning staff. We went out to Piggly Wiggly. Side note, my first job was as a bagger to Piggly Wiggly. A lot of you may not know that, and I have a great affinity for Piggly Wiggly.
What you are today.
I think it did. But bottom line, over the course of a series of weeks, a tremendous amount of outreach with the community to understand truly where the value lied, where the concerns were, and then how can we inform what we're bringing to you here today for temporary. There was a great outreach. We have a great video. The sound doesn't play, so I'm going to skip past this. But you remember that the founder of 880 Cities, Gil Penalosa, was in town. He was here for a week, did a series of events. Really great stuff. The only thing I want to highlight here is we did a community event at Bethel AME focused specifically on this project. And there's actually great B-roll of you, Mr. Chairman, in there, and many others. But we'll, in expeditiousness here, we'll bifurcate it. So not to miss the landing, this is the action plan that is effectively before you today for action. You have this as the last attachment in your books on item number 7. But this is the space. The pictures that you saw before, this is the rendering, and a great deal of gratitude to DesignWorks team, city and county team, to the citizens that helped inform them. But the bottom line, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, is within $300,000 worth of budget, there is a tremendous amount that we can do to activate this space. I will not tell you that everything that we're recommending doing here will be salvaged for the permanent stop, but I am telling you that much of it will. And I'm also telling you that we will learn much from this experience over the next 2 years. How do we bridge that 2 to 3 year gap before the construction of the permanent super stop is conducted to really make this an asset and something that we can all be proud of, learning from the social infrastructure that we've just heard from and from great placemaking tools. You see all of it there. I know you've asked questions. Improved street lighting, dedicated area for parking and for chairs and people, not with cars. Commingling people in cars is always a challenge. Defined areas, some safety enhancements, adding shelter to the bus stops that are there, improving the sidewalks, improving the crosswalks. These are all things that can be done in pretty expeditious fashion. I would like to give a head nod to County Public Works and to Parks and Recreation for their assistance. They will be leaning in and assisting with this construction. And to be clear, Leon County will continue to maintain this once it is approved up until the time that the larger Superstop site and this project, the permanent project, is constructed. The last thing I think I would say, and by the way, I think these are the next steps. The asphalt and slab, the site grading, there's a lot that can be done really quickly after your vote here today. And then we'll work very expeditiously in early 2019 to activate the remainder of what you saw on that sidebar. The last thing I would say is we believe this is factored into the overall program budget, does not detract from it, but on the contrary, prepares the site for what it ultimately will be. Here to answer any questions, and I think the recommended actions on the board for you now.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Let us hear from our speaker before I entertain a motion. Our speaker is Bill Wilson. Bill, if you would come forward, give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 whole minutes to speak.
Bill Wilson, 1816 Old Fort Drive in Tallahassee. Just nothing but support for this. As I think most of you know, Graceful Solutions, we own the site directly north of this parcel between Polk Street and the ditch and west of Meridian. We currently have an application with a development partner to put a 93-unit, 4-story affordable housing structure on that site. So this project, which not only includes this $300,000, but there also is forward funding of $1 million to start working on the ditch and resolving that ditch issue and the floodway and flood zone along that area has a tremendous impact on what can be done with redevelopment in the South City area. And it's just critical that stuff happens and that we do what we can do with the infrastructure to solve that stormwater problem so we can move forward with $17 million apartment development on that site. Our big issue with this site is trash. And it's primarily around the food distribution project on Tuesday. They unload all the food and then unload all their boxes and leave them stacked. People have gone to the fast food places up the street, come down with their lunch, sit around and wait for the truck to arrive, and then their trash gets piled on top of the other trash, and then the wind comes and it all blows across the street. I get the call from code enforcement to come clean up all our land. So we have a challenge, and I've talked to Autumn about it. You can't really put a couple of big dumpsters there because they'll get filled up every other day with community stuff. Mm-hmm. But we've got to find some way to manage the refuge on that site. A couple of garbage cans is not going to do it. But it has been a problem and will continue to be a problem. But the enhancement to that site will help, I think will help a lot. But it's still going to be a challenge. But thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, this is absolutely a breath of fresh air, the conversation. Talking about the need for social infrastructures at work, but the need for social engineering. And I'm so glad that we're stepping because the social dynamic has been festering, and it seems it has become of a degenerative nature in recent months, and it's timely to step in before an element announces that this is the site of where all hell can break loose, except for the days in which food is delivered. That's one day, but there are other days in which there is a non-scheduled activity that has no routine that is documentable. I think that what we're trying to do is wonderful, and it preps that site for a future, which will be a communication exchange. The site on the east side of Meridian, just north of the store, used to be a park. Trailer homes were there, and it is a site that needs attention, because when we modify the site that we're looking at, I think that the human traffic is going to walk across the street into another nondescript vacated trailer area, and if it requires another $150,000 to note that, because what we were shown, it seems that what we were projecting is to be a parking lot. Could we put the slide that was there, what staff has come up with?
It'll be more than a parking lot.
Yeah. And look like, unless I'm reading this wrong, the heart and the centermost part and the majority of that dirt is committed to some cars getting parked there. And the majority of the dirt is not programmed from this slide to be a center for, it's not very flexible. It's a parking lot is what it is. And I think that if we narrowed the parking lot a little bit, and where it adjoins Polk Drive and just came straight down, but not did the east and west, the horizontal arm of this, but just did the vertical north and south arm of it, it wouldn't seem like a parking lot takeover, a preemptive strike. I don't know who would park there all day. Parking lots are considerably warmer than dirt parcels, just plain dirt and grass. But I would suggest that building a parking lot here we should be a little bit more flexible. Secondly, commissioners, I would want that there's no public restroom down there, and I'm wondering, Ms. Pingree, if consideration has been given to some kind of restroom relief program or something. People there all day, and Commissioner Williams-Cox, some of those people voted for you, I believe, but they're there all day and ain't no restroom. And additionally, the dirt next door, going west, is the barber shop, and a little further is the outdoor barbecue, our version of
food truck
of Sonny's, and our open air Sonny's barbecue is there. And just perchance, if we're going to do so much parking lot there, I believe that the barber shop, Mr. Pye, is about 80, 87, and his family refused to let him out the house. And I think that they would rather to reach a deal with us to do something with that. It could be in play as a very special, it would augment that parcel, and I would love to see us do something special. I guess we're going to be taking that anywhere in the future. I don't know when. But what I'm asking, my ask today is consideration for, Mr. Wilson, you know what I'm talking about? The former
Badcock
trailer park.
Oh, yeah.
Tried to buy it, but the owner won't even talk to us about selling it. She has no interest in selling it.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that right there is going to become a new hub of activities that we don't desire. So if we could go up to Badcock or up to Sonny's, I would love to see what that would look like as well. It's just a small parcel, a business that's trying to transition, and I think we could expand activity potential for the area, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, if this is helpful. Potentially for trying to get understand clearly what you're raising. Please know the following. Based upon the approval of staff recommendation or any variation thereunto, we will absolutely work with private landholders. Obviously, the thing that enables us to do what we've recommended here today is the fact that it's Leon County land. But we will absolutely work with private landholders adjacent, from King Food to Mr. Wilson, just on the north side, to the
Barbershop.
The barbershop, and the other restaurant. It's not a restaurant.
Lindy's?
Moving to the west, as well as the owner of the trailer park that doesn't want to sell. I mean, we will absolutely look and work with them as we work to construct this action plan. And I think that all of the community engagement that was in your agenda materials and has gone into this report, hopefully is indicative to the IAA that we will continue that, if not amplify that, as we then move into the construction phase to make improvements to this parcel. So that's a strong commitment in terms of making sure that what we're seeking to mitigate at this property isn't just, voting with its feet 20 or 30 or 50 feet across the street. So that's completely understood. I also would just note, yes, this is a conceptual plan. While I acknowledge that the $300,000 budget is based upon the concepts in this plan, we absolutely will look to make sure that it's not, we're not constructing a parking lot. We are constructing a facility where there is safety for cars and safety for humans, and that there is a barrier, a reasonable barrier between the two. But where what you will see indicated in the green is that where we have noticed people like to set up shop right on Orange and then also right on Meridian, that there's spaces for that. Similarly, underneath where the trees are in the northwest corner, that's where people like to sit. We want to have benches and other facilities and amenities. Commissioner, we did not price out a bathroom. I know that those can be costly, certainly within $300,000. But we absolutely will look at what are the costs for some portable relief, for lack of a better term.
I don't know what they're doing now.
You don't?
No. I mean, I know what they're doing, but
did I give you
They go to local businesses.
This includes a water fountain, so there must be plumbing going in of some nature, unless it's already there.
Yes, ma'am.
You want to take a guess on?
okay. Commissioner Minor, Commissioner Maddox, and then Commissioner Jackson, and then we'll come back to your, I'm sorry, Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ben, I know this is probably going to be I don't mean to put you on the spot. This might be a tough question to ask, but you mentioned earlier that you would try to salvage as much of the value of the $300,000 investment as you could. Mm-hmm. There's a 2 to 3 year period between when these improvements would be completed and the actual construction of the Superstop, right?
Yes, sir.
What's your best guess on what % of the value added by the $300,000 could be carried over into the overall investment at the end for the Superstop?
It is difficult.
The hardest question to get.
No, that's okay. That's I'm pleased to be in the chair responding to the question. If you look at the lighting, if you look at even the fencing and a lot of the illustratives that are around, I think well over. I think
Autumn's trying to get your attention.
Yeah.
You may have
the most expensive items that are on there are the sidewalk improvements as well as the lighting, and those are the elements that really could stay through with the Superstop.
I was going to say 50% or more.
Oh, I'd say more. Yeah, more like 2/3.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks very much.
Commissioner Matlow, I'm sorry I overlooked you a minute ago.
Just wanted to, Mr. Wilson's point, I don't think coordinating with the food distributors and collecting their trash and figuring out how to work around that should be too much of an obstacle. But in that same thought process, I wanted to make sure we were coordinating with the food distributors in advance of the project if the lot was going to be blocked off, so that they knew it was coming if they needed to find an alternate location, and as well as the people who are used to going there to get food know that it's coming in advance.
I think they'd still be able to use it.
I think they will.
Yeah, it's just a truck that comes and they distribute food every Tuesday morning, so they would still.
Okay, yeah, the space is still there. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you for that concern. Representative Matlow. Representative, I'm thinking I'm back in the legislature, y'all.
Flashback.
Jesus. Commissioner Jackson.
Yeah, I think it's it's a really ambitious project for a really, for lack of a better term, you talked about a piece of dirt. And it's something that I think will probably be really surprised, Commissioner Proctor, at what improvements like that will drive out of that community and that neighborhood. And hopefully there won't be a residual effect where just the problem moves across the street. There'll be a little bit of ownership for that sort of property. Me too, I would have not grave concerns, but I would have some concerns about facilities and restrooms for people that use it. And I would imagine the parking lot, because I've been there during food distribution, I imagine it's close to being filled during the food distribution truck operation.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Maddox?
I'm thinking very similarly to Commissioner Proctor.
We'll take your motion after your comment.
Thank you, sir. I'm thinking very similar to Commissioner Proctor on this. I do see a lot of parking spaces here, and I don't know how many days a week it's used as a food distribution spot, but it's like you said, I don't see many people using this as a 8-hour, 24-hour parking spot, but it could hold some very good value for the area. If I had it my way, I would have done less parking spots and a little more green area, or just some other design that just didn't involve so many parking spots. And I could be wrong. I'm just looking at it and counting them, and it does very much look like a parking lot. They're surrounded by grass and some shrubbery and sidewalk. I mean, even if it was more of a park area.
Ben has agreed to take a look at that, and they'll relook at that whole.
My question was, does my motion approve this design?
Not necessarily. I mean, if we give staff direction to come back with something that reflects what you're indicating.
So it approves the funding, but not
the funding.
Okay,
absolutely.
okay. So I can make that motion.
The final design.
I can make that motion to approve the funding with staff coming back with the final design.
Okay, is there a second?
Built off of the comments that were made here.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I do have a question. So there are two concerns that I've heard, and the only question that I'm raising in return is one of timing. If you want us to begin immediately construction, then clear direction moving out today with some flexibility to staff, hearing the concerns that there might be a lot of parking, we could minimize that and add a little bit more seating area, and make it a little bit more park-like. We're happy to take that, and then we can absolutely get mobilized and get these going. If you want us to bring back a new plan in 2-3 months, we can do that, of course. But if the big concern is within budget, I guess what I've heard is a permanent, what you've heard from me is a permanent bathroom feature is not budgetable at that amount. That I'm sure of. Right. Looking into portable uses could be, and I'm willing to look at that. If I've also heard maybe a little bit too much parking, maybe we should minimize that a little bit and a little bit more green space. I think we can handle that as well within the budget that we presented.
My opinion is more park-like. I don't know what the rest of the board is thinking, but that's just...
Me too.
But guys, we cannot delay this any longer. If you go by that place...
You don't have to bring it back. It's just, I want it to be more park-like.
No, we're with you, Mr. Chairman, but is there a commitment that the county is going to pick up the trash? Because when you...
We're supposed to maintain it.
It's county, it's county property.
Yes, sir.
So,
Okay, so we're going to build this in... Okay, good.
Yeah. Commissioner Minor, and then we'll...
Real quick, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just please consider adding a bike rack, too.
Bike rack.
So do I need to amend my motion? Because I think my motion...
I don't think so. I think we've given staff direction, so they'll, Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I will continue to follow up with Ben to make sure all of what we've talked about here today is incorporated into the plan. Commissioner Dozier, I'm sorry.
That's quite all right, Mr. Chair. But just to that point, if we were designing this space for a long-term use, I agree with everything that you all are saying, and I think we would work through the design in a different way. I am really excited about this because it takes an existing used area that is problematic, and as you said, Mr. Chair, we need to do this work soon, and I think we've all been excited. I have heard various comments in our commission meeting the other night about the creativity of staff to come up with an approach to this that addresses the space and the uses, the current uses right now. And I'm really pleased with more than 50% of what we're putting in now will be used for the super stop. So I just have some caution. I like the approach of giving staff direction to explore a couple other ideas, but I don't want to hold this up either, Mr. Chair. And I also believe that we have committed blueprint dollars to the super stop. This is an interim step. So if we can't, it may not be perfect. It may not be everything we want if this was going to be food distribution and other things long term. So a bathroom and other things like that. I agree, that would be the best case scenario. But we have limited dollars. We've expended more on debt service and other things than we originally had thought, but that's a good thing. We get to advance funding for a lot. So this is one of those areas where a little bit of direction I'm comfortable with, but if staff were to say it's not in the budget, or alternatively, the parking, this site, my understanding, there's a lot of vehicle traffic on certain days. So my understanding was the design came about because of the heavy use on certain days and people are parking other places. Was that correct for food distribution and other things?
Well, actually, on food distribution days, there is no traffic on this lot. I mean, there's a couple of trucks that are parked there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, but I thought, Ben, in briefing, you had said that people are parking other places to come to the site. So having some parking there to accommodate the food distribution days and the current use was necessary. Is that correct?
They're parking on the side of Hope Drive, to get,
They're parking anywhere that is not a pothole or a mini lake or anywhere on certain days.
I'm just saying that I heard in briefing and read some parking is necessary.
Yes.
So I get the concerns. I think you all are on the right track in general, but this is an interim step to give us something that is more workable right now, addresses issues right now. And I mean, I'm sorry, someone said this earlier, Commissioner Jackson, it might have been you, that even this type of improvements will start to change the sense of the place, to use our favorite phrase, and hey, this gets right into the social infrastructure that we were talking about at our retreat, right? And the ownership. So I'm comfortable with where the motion is right now and supporting it, but I don't want to hold up the project nor spend money that we will need for what we committed to in the blueprint sales tax referendum. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, let's bring this thing in for a landing.
Absolutely. Mine is just a simple question, Ben. When you mention portable restroom facilities, I want to know exactly what that means. Are we talking portalettes or are we talking some other more private portable facilities or what?
Yes, we're talking your basic portalette, in my mind. Now, I know they get pretty extravagant, but that comes with a bit of a price. Acknowledging that the budget contemplated within the proposal before you for this purpose was zero, I'm trying to be... Who would be maintaining those portalettes? Well, there's a conversation yet to be had, but the maintenance of this facility and anything that would go on it until the time it's taken over by Blueprint to construct the Superstop site is Leon County.
Okay.
So I'm committing to conversations I have not yet had with half of my bosses.
Okay. Just for sanitary reasons and others that you may be aware of. Of course, I know this is temporary. It's not ideal, but, you know, you do need to have something. And so
yes, ma'am.
Something, I guess, is better than nothing as long as we're maintaining it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We, I mean, you, Leon, I mean, the county.
All right, there's a motion by Commissioner Maddox, seconded by Commissioner Proctor. The dead horse is gone. Is there, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. I tell you, if you had to drive by this place every day like I do, taking my daughter to school, it's just like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, people are there from 7:30 in the morning till 10. They show movies out there. They burn fires in the garbage. The water, when it accumulates, it's just, it's unbelievable. But it's become a gathering spot for all.
Community. It's community.
In addition to the food distribution.
Mr. Chair, I'm convinced
Anyway.
that as we use less asphalt, it would be cheaper. It would lessen our costs. So the park light theme, we actually reduce our costs when we use less asphalt. So we're moving in a direction of thought that will make actually the cost come down.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay. Item number 8.
Okay, thank you.
Northeast Gateway Project Update.
Thank you so much, Commissioners, and I'll try and be brief, acknowledging the time. And but this is another great example of something that you have given us consistently direction on, to not wait for 2020 to come about, to begin substantial work on the Northeast Gateway, otherwise known as Welaunee Boulevard, and constructing a facility while capping costs and fiscal exposure to the intergovernmental agency for this, and working closely with our partners on this project. So I've got a brief presentation for you. I'm going to try and go through it pretty quickly. This slide is indicative of what the entirety of Welaunee Boulevard is, just by way of sort of background and bring you up to speed in your memory. The full cost estimate is about $55.4 million. Starts all the way down at Fleischman Road, and ultimately will create a new overpass over I-10. That overpass, when it is located, may become, probably will become, the first new interchange on I-10 in our community since I-10 was created in the 50s. It connects up via a new extension to Shamrock Way. You approved a funding strategy for this back in June of this year, so I know this is somewhat familiar to you. Just a couple things about this, and we've talked about this just by way of project update. We've talked about Dove Pond a number of different times. We've given you periodic updates as we have brought this forward. Start here. This is another example of a similar multi-party agreement where we were able to cap the financial exposure to the IA for our portion of the responsibility to pay for it, work closely with the development district, let them manage the project, and bring it online with, of course, the related benefit, both to the development and then downstream as well, far sooner than had we just gone about constructing this beginning in 2020. And so on this, anticipated completion is decided. It's this month. And actually, we like to get specific. The date is anticipated to be December 23rd. So hopefully that will occur. As you are probably aware, we do have a PD&E study that we are proceeding with. Notice to proceed was given in November, so last month. Public kickoff will be the beginning of next year, and that'll take about 12 to 15 months to complete. But this will be for the entirety of the stretch, including what we're going to be asking you to vote upon here today. And we, as you know, Blueprint community engagement is part of our ethos and what we do. So we've already begun, even in advance of the PD&E study and the consultants we've brought on board, we've begun meeting with neighborhoods and sharing information about the project and listening to concerns that they may have had well in advance. And that will, of course, continue on as well. So just sort of getting down to brass tacks, this really shows you what the tri-party agreement that's before you and that we're asking for your approval today will do, where it will do that. It effectively goes, it is the yellow component, Commissioners. It goes from where the construction has thus far ended all the way to the end of the Canopy Development District, and which is, by the way, the beginning of the city's property out in this area. It is a tri-party agreement. The three parties are the Blueprint IA, which is the funder, if you will, the city of Tallahassee, which germane to this conversation, but has a separate agreement, the city does, with the developer, and then the Canopy Development District. I would like to thank members of all of those parties, thanking the city, you're here, but also I see representatives from the district who have worked on the legal underpinnings in the agreement that have enabled us to get this to you in a posture for vote here today. So what does it do? What does the tri-party agreement do effectively? This is what it does. It expedites, as we talked about, it expedites, again, construction of a Blueprint 2020 project in advance of 2020, consistent with your budgeting and your prior direction. You can see the completion of the 4-lane of construction, caps your investment, so it caps your financial exposure. Stated simply, $5.8 million is the dollar amount, roughly. If it goes beyond that, the district will pick up the delta or the overage. If it's under that, we won't be charged. 5.8 will be charged what the lower amount is. Why is that important? Just look back to the Dove Pond agreement. We were going to pay, that agreement had us paying for 2/3 of it, or $2 million of what we thought would be a $3 million project. I just shared with you it's about to end right before Christmas. That ended up being about a $4 million+ project. But our coverage and our exposure was $2 million. Repayment is consistent with the CIP that you have approved. It's consistent with the city's CIP. And I would like to thank also the Public Works and engineers, both from the city, the county, and from Blueprint, all of which poured over the documentation to assure you that that price point constituted a fair net present value for what is yet to be built. And I think the last thing I want to mention, unless I'm forgetting something, is that everything in this agreement will be competitively bid, which is something that's been talked about in the past, of course, and consistent with state law, and will be managed by the Canopy Development District. With that, these are your two recommended options. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Any questions? Commissioner Deloge?
Yeah,
and
I'd
then
move
Commissioner
acceptance
Proctor.
and then just for discussion.
Second. Okay.
So on your schematic, Ben, that you showed earlier, that this is just a minor correction. If you see the Dempsey Mayo entrance in down there, that is slated to be around about we're 80-90% there, I think. And I think if it's Westminster Oaks and our Public Works and a bunch of those people have been meeting a ton. And what I'm a little nervous about is if this starts going out in the public. And there's been some people that feel strongly about a roundabout. Some people feel strongly about a stoplight. I think we're leaning towards the roundabout, but I don't want to leave that on there, and it'll race it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just address that. Mr. Commissioner, before there's any construction, City and Blueprint will have final approval of design plans. So we hear you, and we're certainly going to take that into consideration.
Can I ask a follow-on question, too? The extension of the Mixookie Greenway, which is out in the future at some point, not part of this, but I'm just kind of curious from an overall Blueprint standpoint. It's going to run along Crump. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's part of what you're doing right here.
Yeah.
Do you know, Autumn?
Yeah, may I?
Yes.
The Northeast Gateway Phase 1 project, that's the Blueprint project, includes the completion of the Miccosukee Greenway, and it becomes like a Walani Greenway. It's a 17-mile loop.
Right.
Right now, it's got it tracking on the perimeter of the properties, but during our PD&E, we will do an analysis of the location of the Greenway.
And timeline in the mix?
Well, the PD&E is a 15-month period, so we're looking into 2020 for the completion of that, and then we'll roll right into design.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This piece of property had some issues which I read about, holding pond and not being sufficient large enough capacity. My understanding that when you build roads, they tend to generate a little bit more water issues. Has engineering been completely complete with respect to holding pond issues and making sure that water is captured on site? Because I think that it does a disservice to build something which is going to generate flooding off-site and issues from Florida Department of Environmental Protection. That's my first question.
I acknowledge that there's been, and certainly reports on some other parts of the development, but I will absolutely affirm to you that stormwater factoring for what is before you for approval is contemplated fully within this project, sir.
Right. What's the length of the 4-lane new road?
Of the new component or of the entirety?
What you're constructing from beginning? Someone move the slide.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, where the red light is of a
The
beginning
yellow
roadway.
line is 3/4 of a mile.
Okay, and up to
the end of the canopy development district's boundary.
Okay, so how far is it down to I-10? From that point,
you would
here
have to
on Fleshman down to I-10. Is that what it's contemplating, going that far?
Well, ultimately, it'll go through the cities, and I don't think I have a graphic up top here that really shows it, or do I? Yeah, I do,
The
earlier on.
PE update slide?
That's right.
That one?
Oh, nope, that's the one. Here it is.
The thick blue line?
The thick blue line, so, okay, 5 miles total. Ultimately, it'll go through what is now the city's part of the toe, if you will, and we'll cross I-10 there.
Okay, so this is a project that was going to cost up $10 million per mile. Is accurate? You said $50 million for 5 miles?
$55 million total.
Okay, good.
With a greenway, there's other components, but I think I'm following.
Right, I mean, but $10 million a mile to make it tight and right, super. Okay, good. What is the MBE commitment on this project with the 3 groups, the Blueprint, the City of Tallahassee, and the Community Development District?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's a 10.5% aggregate.
Is that going to be monitored, and if so, OEV is looking at that?
Yes, sir. There are provisions in the interlocal agreement requiring the district in the construction element to comply with Blueprint's approved disparity targets for construction.
We have an opportunity here with this project. One of the things to do apprentice, to do local preference, to do make sure MBE. We have a classic opportunity to allow for this project to integrate all of those components, and in particular the MBE component, an apprenticeship component. And oftentimes we rather kick the can down the street than to actually make the dreams that we're saying policies stick. But I would like to see us potentially, grapple with making those elements apply to this project. Apprentice, MBE at 10%. Is that a low number, that 10%, or is it?
No, sir, that's what your approved policy calls for.
10%.
They are going to comply with it.
Okay. And we're going to be getting a report on this as we go. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Chairman, you're a good man. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Parker. Commissioner Dozier and Commissioner Week, were you still? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this item, I just want to appreciate staff, city's work to get us this place. I think we're in the right posture, the bid, everything like that. That's fantastic. The only thing I was going to mention was that with the activity at Weelaunee, with other discussions that have been happening, whether it's the I-10 overpass, things like that, eventual interchange there, I'm getting a lot more questions about the status of the Powerhouse property on the city side, and even the Thornton Road extension, which we had looked at years ago, and I know there's some potential issues there with the Greenway Master Plan, and I'm not sure, it's been so long since we talked about that, where we left that. So I just wanted to mention that here, and for our city colleagues, and particularly the new folks, just letting you know, I'm sure you're hearing it too, and if at some point there is a conversation we can have and hear an update, if the city, or when the city decides to move forward, and particularly about the Thornton Road extension, I'd be really interested to hear some information about that. And it seems like that's going to it could come into question when we're looking at expanding the Greenway and other things. So I thought I'd mention it now. But in general, this project is great. I'm glad we're moving forward. And it's not surprising that the community is taking notice and asking more questions. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. we will get you a future update, Commissioner Dozier, on that. Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, did we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, if whoever ultimately makes the motion, if staff could have a certain amount of flexibility given the nature of the agreement involving two other parties, so that if staff has to make any non-substantive minor adjustments to the agreement, it wouldn't have to come back
Okay.
to the board.
We'll take a motion with that amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have one point of information. Are the electric utility lines buried on this track? Is that buried power lines? Are these lines
seems
going
that it
to
would
be
meet that
subject to
requirement.
trees falling down and knock them out? I'm trying to understand what is.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ben?
Yes, Commissioner, they're buried.
Yeah.
Along
And
this
it
roadway.
meets the requirement
Okay,
to
thank
be
you.
underground. Commissioner Minor, did you have it? Okay. Did you make the motion, Commissioner Deloge?
He did.
Okay, and you accept that amendment to give staff flexibility? Okay. The motion is by Commissioner Deloge. Is there a second? Proctor. Seconded by Commissioner Proctor. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Concludes general business,
Commission-
Mr. Chairman. That concludes general business. Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
And we have no citizens to be heard.
No, sir.
Commissioner Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my colleagues on the county commission have already heard me talk about this, but during the campaign, one thing I always heard, the most common concern I heard from people was the citizen input. And I know both the county, the city, and Blueprint do a good job of soliciting input and allowing people to speak. But it's still a concern out there. And even though I know we do a good job, the fact that we're hearing it out there on the campaign trail, Diana, you probably heard the same thing, and Jeremy, means that we should do something more about it. With that in mind, I wanted to see if perhaps the board might be willing to move the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda for future board meetings to the beginning before the agenda items are presented for us to vote on.
Consider it done.
Okay.
Consider that done.
Thank you.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Mr. Chair, on point there.
Yes.
Just a question on this. In Blueprint meetings, people like Mr. Wilson are allowed to put in speaker cards to speak on specific issues right before we discuss them.
And we'll continue to let them do that.
Of course. This
Yes.
is general comments on unagended items. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, Commissioner Minor, I absolutely agree with you. We have had times when other boards, people couldn't, or it wasn't the practice to speak on the item right before we had our discussion. So I think we have improved some things, and I'm all in favor of moving general comment time to the beginning. It may inform other things, but I wanted to make a comment here because I can't remember if it's chairman's practice or if it's a Blueprint policy. And it might be nice to have that, with Commissioner Minor's encouragement, to be a policy that we take comments at the beginning and on each item, as we do at the county and so many of our boards. So just a thought on that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think we might want to consider, if we're going to take comments on the front end, that we don't engage, because otherwise you're going to have times when it's going to take us down some rat. I mean, in other words, we can.
Yeah, we don't do that during city commission meetings.
All right.
I don't know
I
if
just
you
want
all
to make
do,
sure
but
we're not opening up
we
a
don't.
free-form
No,
discussion.
that wouldn't be my intent.
Okay.
On another point, I guess. I mean, nobody else
Yes,
is allowed to
Commissioner
speak,
Maddox.
but I hate to bring anything from the county to a joint board, but I think it's probably a good idea. If we're going to do that before and not speak, we need to do it at the end and let people allow people to have conversation with us. So you have two times. One, if you want to speak at the beginning, there's no comment. We're just listening.
We do it.
If you want to speak at
We do
the
the same
end,
thing.
then we can comment at that point.
yeah.
And then in between, if people want to speak on items, they speak on items. But everything in those two particular times are non-agenda items.
Sure.
I don't think that's anything real complex. I think really, Mr. Chairman, if that's what you wanted to do with your meetings, you can just decide to do that with your meetings.
Sure.
I don't think it takes a major policy change or a motion or anything. But I appreciate Rick bringing it up because it does give people opportunity to speak on things they want to get out.
Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You do have a policy.
Okay.
on your meetings and your agenda. It's an attachment. The format is an attachment, so if any changes are necessary, we'll bring that back in February.
All right.
So it'll be an easy fix.
We'll have persons to be heard at the top of the agenda. And then we'll let each person speak if they want to speak on each individual item, and then we'll have persons to be heard at the end of the agenda.
Now, those persons be heard on non-agenda items, correct?
Right.
Yes. Do you need a motion for that?
Yes.
Rick, go ahead, man.
So moved, as the chairman has described.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. It carries unanimously. So we'll have that back to you at our February 28th meeting.
Point of information on it, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Proctor?
County Commissioners, you all know our NACO meeting typically is the last day on like the 28th, and I'm pondering, is there a conflict with the NACO
Of
meeting?
February?
NACO, National Association of Counties Legislative Weekend in Washington.
It's not till March.
Yeah.
When is it?
It's the 1st through the 6th, I think.
March 1st and not,
Yeah, it's end of February, beginning of March. So if we've
Okay.
got blueprint on that Thursday, the 28th, we don't start.
NACO's the
until
second,
Friday.
starts that
Okay.
Sunday the
Yeah,
second.
you can fly
Yeah,
out.
I mean,
yeah.
it's-
We have sometimes began
Right.
in
That's a good
February.
point.
you
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Starts second, Sunday.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we stand adjourned.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Arnold.